Hello, happy Tuesday, front-end friends. It is time for another episode of Front End Horse Live. We have Brian Douglas with us today. Brian, how you doing, man? Great to see you.
I am doing fantastic, and this is literally the first time I've actually seen the animation intro, because I always catch your stream midstream, so
Yep.
This is awesome.
Well, that's what I had to do. I had to have you on. I'm like, he's got to see this animation. I keep telling him about it. I'm saying, Brian, did you see the animation today? You're like, sorry, I missed it. I'm like, all right, we got to have you on from the beginning. This is the only way to get you in, like, first 5 minutes. So
Yeah, highly recommend it. It was worth it.
everyone can come on and just see the animation. Yep, I just want to show you behind the scenes. This is how I push the buttons. And yeah, Brian, so good to have you. We have Annika in the chat for the first time. Met them on Jack's stream. So good to see you. Antho's here. Anthony's here. Fahad. Creature, welcome. King Kong Chessmaster, sick name, and great to have you. Chat, lovely to have you all. And Brian, super excited to have you. I've been on your podcast. We've chatted a bunch in Discord. Have we done other stuff together? I'm trying to remember. I think it was mainly the podcast.
We spoke at the same conference. I think it was the Henri's event.
Henri, Jamstack Toronto. Awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I'm just been looking forward to having you on the show. You just went through a big October. Happy November to you. Because
yes, looking forward to November.
October for you is a lot. But before we get into that, you want to introduce yourself to people who might not know who Brian Douglas is.
Yeah. So I normally go by BDougieY Yo on Twitch. So that's easier. It's SEO reasons. Definitely searchable. But yeah, Brian Douglas is my given name, and I work at GitHub as my day job. I've recently taken on the role, which is Director of Developer Advocacy, which means I get to direct advocates, like literally, which is pretty cool. We've got a team of 5 at this point, and we're just looking to engage users, free users, open source users, to use things like actions and code spaces, and most recently Copilot, which is something that I think it's funny because I got really heavily involved in using it and with that team, and then up until the ships that we did last week, I haven't been involved with it. So like, I can tell you now it works in PyCharm. But anyway, I'm not here to talk about Copilot. I'm here to talk about open source. And I've created a project called OpenSauced, which we'll get into.
Yeah, I've talked about Copilot on this stream plenty. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. I keep saying how much I like it, and it blows me away. Totally, just it's very smart. It's a very smart little tool. But yeah, congratulations. Creature says congrats on the new role. Super cool. So yeah, October is a lot for you. Do you want to explain why, in case people might not know?
So October being the 10th month of the year, it was the month we actually did GitHub Universe, which is funny. I'm writing a whole newsletter about this experience. So I'll ship that. Subscribe to BDougieY Live later. But GitHub Universe is the event that we had. It's our premier event we've done for the past, I think, 8 years at this point. Actually, no, it's too many, 7. And it's where we had our keynote, and we've taken a different approach because like everybody, like we're streaming right now. Most DevRel and most like engineers and product managers are all remote. So we just sort of doubled down into just doing it remote again, despite whether conferences are opening up. So we have a highly produced keynote, which is absolutely amazing. Oh yeah, I play guitar in it.
This is so good. This is I was watching it earlier. You pop up a couple times here, or just the once? I'm trying to.
Yeah, no, this is the one time. It's like my short segment.
I love this,
but there's multiple angles.
Yeah,
and multiple takes too as well. So like, I was just actually editing the thumbnail for the blooper reel.
Nice.
And you could see me. So it's funny. So this was actually recorded in the same place that Star Wars was created, up in San Rafael.
I can tell. I mean, this is.
Yeah, all the miniatures in the background, it really shows. On my TikTok, actually, one of my last TikToks, I show a T-Rex. It's not a T-Rex, it's a raptor.
Okay.
It's a raptor in the rafters.
Nice.
So they also did Jurassic Park there as well. So a lot of the indoor scenes.
Oh, that's so cool.
So yeah, this is all studio. Most of those clothes are not mine in the hamper. It is my sweater.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so they just set the stage, and then I show Copilot.
Awesome.
And what's actually funny is they didn't know I could play guitar. It was actually sitting in the background as like an extra prop. And while we were waiting, there's like a crane shot. This one's on the slider thing, or whatever, the jib.
Right. It was like
But
above you, right? I think it was.
yeah, so like in the beginning, there's like as I stop playing guitar, that crane comes and I have to focus and look at it. There you go.
That's
There you
so
go. My shiny
cool.
head.
Dude, the production quality here, so good.
Yeah,
So
so
good.
my blooper is me walking through the door and looking for the camera and then starting my line, which was like the hardest thing ever. Like I don't understand how anybody could do that on a sitcom. Um, but yeah, that was the actually in sitcoms you're not supposed to look at the
Yeah,
camera,
he's
but that's
about to say
besides the point.
they don't have that problem. They just ignore it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So but yeah, I ended up picking up the guitar and tuning it while they were messing with the camera. And then I started playing like Weezer or something. And they're like, "Oh, you play guitar? Can you try it again with the guitar?" I was like, "Okay, sure." And that's the one we went with.
That's cool.
All the other ones were boring.
That seems fun, man. That seems fun. Awesome. Yeah. So this is what I wanted to bring you on and talk to you about now. Just
Yeah,
this,
yeah, yeah.
everyone. This is Brian Douglas, star of.
Yes, I do keynotes. So let
Yes.
me know if you need some keynote assistance. No, it's funny because like the same production crew is the same production crew that did Jamstack.
Really?
So if anybody saw
Wow.
that, actually, I highly recommend the entire conference. Shout out to Ben Holmes, who has an amazing talk about Slinkity,
Yep.
and who produced his own segment for the conference. It was amazing. But yeah, I ended up connecting the Netlify folks with these folks,
Okay.
and we ended up recording. They recorded the Jamstack Conf stuff the week before we did this stuff.
Oh, that's so
So
funny.
like we sort of overlapped a little bit, which is like literally because even Cassidy shows up in our in
Oh
our
yeah, yeah, yeah.
broadcast
She
as
had
well.
a whole skit. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, it seems like a whole lot of fun to do this kind of stuff, man.
Yeah, it's the future of DevRel, and like I don't know how many DevRel folks are sitting here in the chat, but like we made a conscious decision to like not go into like any sort of in-person events. Like we're just not going to be sponsoring at all. And like this is GitHub's decision. Like everybody to each their own. Like definitely support community events.
Hmm.
But we had this YouTube account that'd been sitting around for like 12 years that no one really did anything with.
Got it.
And I call it like the conference graveyard. So I pitched internally, and we eventually did it like with the last universe, even more so this universe, that every single talk in the broadcast session is edited down into a YouTube-esque experience. And and the difference is like 22,000 views versus like a couple hundred, which is normal
Got
engagement a
it.
week after a conference.
I'm gonna
So
like and subscribe, and I'll hit that
I
bell
appreciate
so
that.
I'm notified. I'm just doing what other YouTubers tell me to do at this point. So
Yeah, it's meant to be. But yeah, I mean, but my entire team, the advocates, we all engage and do content. So you'll see a lot of us after this conference, just creating shorts and
awesome.
checkout videos, talking to PMs, and really engaging community in a way that we haven't really done up until now. I think YouTube has been a place that a lot of developers leverage to get their content out there.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's always some. It felt like DevRel just never crossed over into YouTube, and I'm seeing more and more YouTubers in DevRel mix and intermingle.
Dude, I would love to talk to you about that like a whole other time because that like
Yeah,
I'm super interested in that and would love to pick your brain and be involved in whatever way because that like I I almost want to be like, all right, open source, we can do that another time. I don't know about that, but we promised everyone, um, yeah, we promised
yeah,
people
we can get
open
into open
source.
source.
But I would absolutely love to like put a pin in that and come back to that another day, another time, maybe in DMs or something. But yeah, that'd
Yeah,
be
for
cool.
sure.
So yeah, so you run OpenSauced. Do you want to kind of explain what OpenSauced
Yeah.
is?
So OpenSauce is an ambitious project to state that it's very ambitious. It's the path to your next open source contribution. So the whole gist of it and how I sort of like got involved in doing this is I wanted to learn how to use GraphQL, but also I wanted to build a React app on top of my GraphQL learning. So about 5 years ago, when GraphQL first sort of hit the scene, it was like a pre-alpha. Um, I ended up just jumping on because GitHub was one of the first companies to leverage a public GraphQL
Oh,
API.
cool.
For that reason, I built this, and I've always had the idea of like I wanted to get involved in open source, but never knew where to start. So it's my way to stalk open source projects. So I just have like a list of projects that I'm just sort of tracking, which you could actually show if you like. Just hit login. It will actually. There's a bunch of marketing copy that I spent a lot of time trying to figure out. But yeah, this is a GitHub app. What we're going to look for is your stars, and as well as the ability to create one repo for you.
Okay.
So that's what this is saying right here. Don't mind the UI. If anybody's a great UI or UX designer or has a recommendation, I'm all ears. Please
Are
hit
you
me up.
accepting PRs?
Yes. So, there is actually an issue open with a pretty naive attempt. We had like a junior designer approach redesigning it, and the issue is open. So if anybody wants to try to
Cool.
redesign the UI, there's a storybook as well. So you could just leverage a sandbox to recreate these components.
Awesome.
But yeah, so here you've now created a GitHub repo on your account using this GitHub app, which is called OpenSauced. If you click this button, it'll take you to your GitHub repo that was just created for Atroast.
All right.
And this is going to basically say you don't want to install it in all repositories. If you click selected repositories, and then look for open source goals.
Got it.
And this is like me knowing how to use GitHub now that I work here. It's almost an elegant experience until you hit the install and authorize. It just bumps you right into the I need a redirect. It bumps you right into your GitHub dashboard.
Great. Now everyone knows how long my password is. Thanks, Brian.
Apologies. Everybody's been screenshotting that too as well. So we're gonna encrypt this before the end of the stream. So cool. So two things has happened. One, you've created a open source account, but the account really is just a GitHub repo. So if you went to github.com/atros/open source goals, there we go. What we've done is we've actually cloned a template that looks like this. It gives you a couple different actions right off the bat, which is just going to be checking in the background for the context of what you've been storing. So if you save a repo, it will check that and it'll keep it up to date. So like how many stars it has, how many issues are open, etc. There is a lot of context here and how it works. And this is really just to put anybody at ease of security reasons. Like, what just happened? I gave you access to my GitHub account. Yes, but no. You gave us access to just one repo. And the entire backend of the project is this repo. So
got it.
To further prove that point, if you go back to OpenSauced and you type in OpenSauce, so open/sauce. So wait, actually, yeah, OpenSauced. /OpenSauce. So it's just a GitHub repo.
Wait, I'm typing it here. Is it all one word?
Actually, let's make this easier. Click up on that link that says GitHub up on the top, over on the left. Yeah, and just copy that URL.
All right, thanks. All right,
I was making it too hard for you.
All good.
Yeah, and just go ahead either. No, you keep that in there.
Okay.
We've got some code that will clean that up.
Cool.
So you hit add. Now this is a good. This is a. Well, hold on. We might have an error message. That should be adding, but I think there is. It looks like we can't create issues for some reason.
It just worked. Okay. I had to refresh. I love this.
All right, so folks, what you saw today was a bug. So as soon as you create the account, it seems like there's some time. Either the token itself, which is not cached. So it basically thought you didn't have access to your repo until you hit refresh.
Got it.
So
Ben Holmes just dropped it in the chat, by the way, if you want to shout him out in person.
Oh, Ben, I was just shouting you out earlier about your awesome Jamstack conference talk. So yeah, everybody go watch that. Like and subscribe that thing.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
So this is saying seek in progress. So if you go back to your OpenSauced goals repo, and we can look at the code too as well. And like this experience, anybody who wants to contribute to OpenSauced, like this is stuff I do on stream all the time, is to show how this works. I also have YouTube videos that sort of showcase this as well, which we can get to as well.
Awesome.
So if you scroll up to the top and go to your actions tab, you should see either action that's running or it's actually completed. It took 26 seconds.
Okay.
We took too long. So what that action does, it basically goes and grabs the data. So now we know how many stars OpenSauced has. Shout out to 526. That's higher than last time. And then up on the top right, you can see the stuff that you've starred as well. Oh, good on you for starring the repo.
I do what I'm told, man. I like, I subscribe, I hit the bell, I hit the star, I do it all.
Yeah, so this is the gist of it. So like if you wanted to add more projects, we're looking at the last 10 things you've starred, and then we're showing up the last 3 of those
Okay.
up on the right. So if you hit like the SWC, oh, what is that? Is that the that's
This one?
the
Oh,
yeah,
SWC?
Netlify? Yeah. What is that project?
SWC is, yeah, the compiler that
Oh, the compiler thing,
Next.js
yes.
just brought into them into themselves.
Oh,
Yeah.
they just did they acquire it, or I know, is that
They
what you say in
they
open
they
source?
hired the main guy, so
Yes.
however you want to put that, yeah. Thank you,
Shout out
Anthony, for dropping
to
that in.
Sweet. Shout out to the Vercel, who's like they got the Webpack dude, Tobias, and now they have SWC. Like they're doing stuff over there. So,
Seriously.
and this is like just like one quick pen that I will actually wanted to mention, which you can get into later, which is the folks. The assumption is like open source, there's no money in it, or there's no value in doing open source contributions. But like the legit maintainer for these project for Webpack, who's been just chugging along on his own, taking a little bit of funding, like acquired as employee. I doubt he was white, like he had the whiteboard to get that job. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I've never whiteboarded for any of the jobs I've had. Actually, that's not true. One of them I did, and I knocked it out the park. Um, but besides that one that I successfully whiteboarded at, every other job since then, never had the whiteboard. So just pointing that out.
It's an investment is what it seems like to me, right? Like
Yeah.
it's a long game. It's not a launch your thing, immediately become rich, but it's a over
Yeah.
time gain a name, gain a reputation for being a great developer, and someone who's
Yeah.
able to come up with novel solutions to problems. And then yeah, you walk in and to any interview or whatever and be like, hey, I made SWC. It's a thing that you're about to put into Next.js. Like
Yeah.
you should bring me on board.
Yeah, and like the thing that you like we have to point out, which is like the thing no one wants to point out anymore, is tech is not equitable. Like there's no like path for everybody to have equal opportunity. And like I think we're driving towards that. And like the hope is to get to that point where everybody has an equal shot at getting a job. But at the end of the day, like there's a reason why the majority of the tech CEOs are all white dudes, which is nothing against white dudes. I think they're awesome. I have a lot of white
Oh,
friends.
dude, I'm not. Yeah, no, go off. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna.
But my thing is like if you can get a competitive edge by contributing to SWC now and get a job at Vercel, like do it. Like go be
Yep.
a friend, go be a bud with that maintainer. Go be like very like instrumental of getting discussions answered. Because when it comes time for Vercel to raise another round to become a $2 billion company, they're going to be looking as close as like everybody's going to ask their friends like who wants to get a job. Let's make this easy. Like GitHub, even GitHub has like we have a hiring goal for the year. Like we're pretty close to it, but like we still need to hire people.
Well,
So what I'm getting at is like everybody's going to be looking for the friends, they're looking for who they're contributing alongside of, and like, hey, do you need a job? Like, here's the interview. Here's like the idea of the questions you'll probably be asked. Like, here's how to prepare.
yeah.
Like that competitive edge is like invaluable. Yeah, I've been helping out some other folks getting interviews at places like GitHub and stuff like that. My DMs are open. You can find me.
That's awesome.
But I don't want to. Like, we're continuing to digress away into open
All
source stuff.
all good. Yeah. So just before we hop off, a couple things in the chat. Anthony says, yeah, I'd say you shouldn't expect any return on open source work for like 6 to 12 months, but if you stick to it, the returns can be huge.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's like Sheeb.
What's
Sorry, that was a bad. The Sheeb token.
Oh,
That was
I
a bad
don't.
joke.
So it's all good. I just don't know it. Sorry.
It's a new Dogecoin. It
Got
takes
it.
a couple months.
Got it. Okay.
Sorry, everybody, don't buy it. Don't buy cryptocurrency. Like I'm not recommend. Don't get your
Endorsed by
financial
Brian
advice from me.
Douglas. Got it. King Kong Chess Master says I unofficially advocate for a lit HTML. What do you think of web components / custom HTML components?
Yeah, I think honestly, with like what Astro's doing and like 11D, I think that's the future. I think a lot of people are getting burnt out on trying to find the latest and greatest. I think SWC and Next.js are doing a great job to make it approachable, so you don't need to know 0 to CSS of how everything works. So like understanding like a new cutting edge way of doing things, which
Mm.
will probably eventually become the norm, is definitely valuable for you to learn. Yeah, can't say it enough. Like me personally, I learned React at a really great time back in like 2014, 2015. And it was really because I wanted to learn something different than doing Ruby on Rails and jQuery. So I learned React, got into React and JSX. As soon as they switched over to JSX from the previous like create class component stuff inside of like HTML files, that's when I got into React, and it was like the best time because
Wow.
then Webpack and Babel and everything else started. Like I was learning everything as it was being built.
Right.
So if you can learn something as it's being built, like that's really invaluable for your career because then you prematurely become senior engineer, which is a whole nother diatribe of around senior versus junior versus mid-level, and when do you need 10 years or do you need 5 years or do you like if you could just be really good at something and can bring a lot of other folks along. uh Lit HTML would be like a really good platform to start that sort of progress.
Yeah, if you can just be
Though you
that
might be already be
asset,
senior, you could be staff too as well.
that's awesome. Um, last one, and then we will hop back onto the planned schedule for today. Ben Holmes says personal belief UI is a function of state. A lot of frameworks try to couple the state, static state generation, and the UI together. Why not build a nice SSG for the state layer, Astro or Eleventy, that hooks into any UI you want? That sounds familiar, Ben. That sounds like you might have an idea
Sounds like there's
cooking
a
there.
little bit of bias in there.
No, but yeah. But at the same time, I think it's a great idea. Astro and Slinkity both are kind of like coming along and going, yeah, like this makes a lot of sense to me. So I'm all for it. Awesome. So I clicked the little logo. Whoops. Anyway, so OpenSauced brings us to
Yeah. So
SWC.
what I wanted to point out is if you hit that plus sign, so these are your stars, the stuff you've
Uh-huh.
starred. If you hit that plus sign of any of these projects, they'll show up down in the bottom. So now you've got I don't know how to pronounce Steph, I guess.
Steph. Yeah.
um,
That's
I know
Steph
Steph.
Eccles. Yeah.
Yeah, so you now have Steph's project. Now Steph's project's now being added to your data.json, which we haven't actually looked at. If you go back to the open source repo, and again, like this is all sort of really clever stuff I've done to make it easier for me to have a project that I can sort of source my own open source contributions. But I'm also building this on the backbone of like I don't want a database and I don't want to store anybody's data.
Mhm.
So despite you being an open source user, all your data is listed right here,
Okay.
available for you to be accessed. If you look at your issues at the moment, you'll see that the issues also match the same data. And it's because
Okay.
I'm using issues as the sort of conduit of my database. So here, you've
Interesting.
got nothing in your actual issue
Yeah.
or any sort of data there. My goal is eventually hook into comments as well. But if you go into OpenSauce and click on one of those projects, sorry, on the actual UI itself.
Okay.
So click on Steph. You without errors, you should be able to click on Edit Notes, and then write a quick note of like, I don't know, say I added this on stream or something. Cool. Hit Save Notes. Also, there's a PR already open to fix that UI. It's actually a PR is open. I'm actually waiting. We can actually check that on a bit.
Okay.
I'm waiting for feedback, which I haven't got back to get. So now, since you've just added a note there, you can go back to your issue, which it was, I think, Steph's project,
Oh,
and you should have a comment there.
nice.
So what I use this for is I write a bunch of notes. So like if I find out information about Steph, like maybe she's only online, well, that's probably really creepy. But if I say that like, oh, contributors are so this, and this, I'd write down. Or like these are issues I'm looking to contribute to, I'd store it in this list.
Got it.
I think there's actually if you go to edit notes, there should be a template too as well. Oh, you know what? It broke. Hopefully it's getting fixed. I wonder if it, can you switch to dark mode real quick? I wonder if you click that moon on the top, click edit notes. It's because dark mode. We don't have the basic template is actually not. This is funny, but this is open source. So if anybody's following along, if you want to open up issues about these things that we're finding as we're looking at it, would love to get that fixed in light mode
Let's
because someone only
drop the
made that work.
link. Hey there, Mike. Good to see you.
Yeah, it looks like we got a contribution. We didn't actually QA it in light mode because I probably QA'd it and I only use dark mode, so my bad.
All good.
Um, but yeah, so basically you have a basic template. So if you wanted to actually track notes with like a structure, we have that ability there. And then because Steph has no issues, nothing's actually showing up here. But
Right.
like an OpenSauced will have quite a few issues.
So just real quick, OpenSauced is just so I'm understanding it is kind of it's a project that you run, but it's also an app that um, makes it easier for me to contribute and follow open source projects that I'm interested in. Is that
Yeah.
how you would put it?
Yeah, I use it. I used to use this term. I'm trying to get away from. I'm trying to get a new term, but I stalk open source projects. So if you wanted to stalk an open source project, and
Yeah,
this is my story, which is like
I
I
see
wanted to
no
contribute.
issues with that verb whatsoever.
Yeah, I wanted to contribute to Webpack back in the day, back when they were going to 2.0, and I found a bunch of issues that I think I could have contributed to. But I've got two small kids, so like that means most of my open source happens on Fridays or
Mm,
on Sunday evenings. So because if I find the issue while I'm at Hacker News or looking at a newsletter or just sort of like farting around during the week, I want to contribute to it later, but I want to store that somewhere else. And at the moment, which is funny because when I built this, I joined GitHub, and then GitHub had a feature which never shipped to the public, which was bookmarking issues, which you could technically no, you still can't do it. And I was using it so heavily that I stopped contributing to open source. And then they're like, "Hey, this feature is not going to work out. We're going to kill it." And like when I say this, we have staff ship. So the way we QA our new features, if we staff ship them to every employee. So a lot of times when I'm streaming, I've got this little black bar up on top, and that black bar is my staff bar, and it gives me all the details of the last PR that was merged, who did it, performance, and all these other metrics and stuff like that. That I can report whenever I find bugs and issues in the product.
got it.
OpenSauce actually has a staff bar, so if you're a part of the organization, you'll get the staff bar on top as well.
Nice.
But it's only for people who are part of our triage team or above.
Okay. Cool.
Which the triage team, it's just you just raise your hand, tell me you want to be a part of it, and I'll add you. And there's a whole doc. There's actually a doc in the open source repo about what the triage team expectations and stuff.
Okay. Awesome. So this seems really cool. Like, okay, so good first issues. Ah, it's a nice little filter to help me
Yeah,
kind of.
yeah, and that
Nice.
was all contributions from folks other than myself. So these are all as folks think of like, hey, it'd be cool if we could do this. Like that was an idea someone else had, and then like
Awesome.
that whole the whole right bar or so the little not actually dark mode was somebody else. Shout out to MT Foley actually implemented that for us. Um, and then like the setup code triage was my contribution, but the contributors section right there that shows like all the contributors on the with their faces, also a contribution that came from someone who was like, hey, it'd be cool if I could see contributors
Yeah.
and know like who to reach out to. And then if you fork the project, you can view the fork, which I think that state might be a little bit broken because I don't think you unless you forked the project already. I don't think you have.
No, it
Yeah.
was just kind of guessing that I did. What's code triage?
Yeah. So if you click on code triage, hopefully this button works. Okay, cool. It was broken at one time because of JWT stuff, but Triage is a project that's been around at least for 10 years at this point. As long as I've been programming and doing open source, you could actually sign up for this and get notifications on when OpenSauce has new issues or good first issues.
Okay.
So like with GitHub, you get notifications if you're part of the organization. But if you're an outsider and you just want to get notifications on like what's happening in the project, so like think of like React as a release. I want notifications on that,
Right.
but like there's not a really good way. Actually, there is a good way now. We actually ship that feature on GitHub, so that's beside the point. But if I just want to find out new issues that get open that I could probably contribute to, you just sign up with GitHub here. So it's a completely separate project. I don't maintain.
Okay.
It's a Heroku engineer who created it
Cool.
and maintains it with a group of folks. But yeah, that's what Code Triage is.
Cool.
Created by Schneems. Funny
Sheesh.
enough, it's hard to say his name. My first ever my first ever conference altogether. I sat at a breakfast table before the conference started at the same table as Schneems. And
Nice.
he was a super nice guy. He actually introed me to his friend sitting next to him. His friend was the first person who ever contributed to any of my projects.
Cool.
and got my feet wet at open source. It's a completely small world. Just kind of chance that this happened. I just happened to know this project from him, but more people know this project outside of me. But yeah. Anyway, small world.
Awesome. Cool. So that's OpenSauced. Was there anything else that we wanted to touch on? Just kind of
Yeah.
discussing OpenSauced.
Yeah, I mean, we were doing great on time. Yeah, I just wanted to actually point out there's another thing I'm working on, which is I'm working so this whole right repo recommendations thing,
Mm-hmm.
it's focused on um like your stars, but we actually have an update which I'm actually powering. So if you go back to your open source goals repo, I've been actually collecting every user's star data, and I try to make it very clear that this is what's happening, because I don't want to feel like people are getting like their data stolen or
You're the
whatnot.
next Zuckerberg is basically what I'm hearing,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, I can't wait to sell all this stuff. Um, star data. But yeah, this stars.json file. So some of your data.json, stars.json stores your stars.
Okay.
And what I've been doing is I'm taking that sort of modeled JSON data and identifying what different open source users, if they start the same project, recommend those above the rest. And then based on how recently you started, also recommend those above the rest too as well. So like it's a bit of a well, it's called an algorithm, but it's a very naive algorithm which I've been working in the public. It's like the only thing I've been working on the last couple months. And
Got
the
it.
idea is TikTok. Like when you go to the you know TikTok.
I
Folks here,
do.
you'll probably know TikTok. But when you're on the For You page, the For You page basically gives you a recommended video based on stuff you've liked and looked at and other stuff. I eventually want to get to that point where I have like a public algorithm that anybody can go to API. At the moment, it's API sauce. Dot OpenSauce.pizza. I'll probably will be API dot
I love the
OpenSauce.pizza in the first.
domain. It's so good.
Um, but it'll be a public API that anybody who I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to deliver this. I want to make sure that everybody can have access to like what are the projects that people are starring,
Hmm.
and what are the projects that people are contributing to. Because my whole thing is like at the moment, open source is about 500 people who've signed up and are using it, not actively, but have logged in and saved at least one project.
Okay.
Um, I would love to point 500 people to a project that needs help and contribution.
Hmm.
So like for picking on Ben Holmes, like Ben's project's only a couple months, like 6 months old maybe. Like it'd be awesome if he could, yeah, hot sauce. All right,
That's
I'll
good.
have to
That's
get the
good.
trademark for that.
Ben's got good
Um,
ideas.
but yeah, it'd be really cool to have like a hot sauce newsletter or updates of like what's trending. So that way folks can point their direction to stuff that needs help and not always go to like view or free, because a lot of times when people try to get involved in open source, they always go to the big names and then they find out, oh, everything's taken or I have no context on how any of this works, so I can't contribute.
Yes.
But it'd be awesome if like we can have a signal of projects that are looking to intake contribution and have a good onboarding path. And that's the ultimate goal for this entire ecosystem of open source.
That's great. Yeah, because that was one of my questions is like I would love to be like a React contributor or a Gatsby contributor or whatever, but I go in there like the couple of times I've stirred up the courage to, I go in there and I'm like, I am not this good at this. And all of these
Yeah,
are over my head or seem like they're going to be a ton of work with a ton of like uh understanding that I just don't have.
yeah, and like my recommendation is like yes, go look at React, see how the things work. But like my recommendation was go to MDX, go to that project which needs help, which is the how Gatsby and now and also Next.js they do Markdown.
Right.
Uh, you could do React components inside of Markdown. Um, that could use extra contribution, and like that's a project that's ripe to be acquired or merged into like the
Mm,
greater. I don't think it's going to happen, but like if you're looking for a project that you could actually learn a small piece of it and then sort of write up the chain into React, then you can go help contribute to React because you're providing value. It's like if you join the React team to join the core team because it's a legit Facebook job, chances are you're not going to be tasked to be like, okay, work on everything. Like, chances are it's going to be like, hey, we have a problem. It's suspense. Like, can you just work on this one problem? And like even Dan Abramoff, he's even like said it publicly. It's like, I don't know how any of this works. Like on stuff that he's never contributed to or like built, he doesn't know how like how the CSS is compiled through JSX because like it's not a thing he works on. But what he's working on is things like suspense and how state management works and how the
Got
context
it.
can be less scary and can be more approachable. Like he's working on all that stuff. So when it comes down to like, there was like a tweet where he was asking something like, oh, he was trying Tailwinds for the first time, and he was like publicly tweeting about it, his experience. And it's like your assumption is like, oh, he's a React core contributor. He should know how Tailwinds work. And like the honesty is like, no, he has other things to do. So like
Yeah.
contributing to React, like if you just break down the problem to a smaller step, and that's what I do, which might be a good segue to actually look at the issue.
Awesome.
If you look at the open PR, because I want to talk about how to like contribute to open source,
Yeah.
not just open source, but just open source in general. This is a PR that I probably should have reviewed before the end of Hacktoberfest. So apologies for somebody looking to get a T-shirt. Um, oh no, it's still a work in progress. So it looks like Vortex actually already called it out on the bottom. But so when you edited your note, you probably noticed the UI a bit broken, like the spacings, the padding and stuff like that's a little
Hmm.
off. Um, so this guy is actually he's fixing it in the design system, so
Okay.
that way it looks better when it's rendered. And the first thing we do is actually we step back. If you look at where it says fixes 1160, if you click on that sort
There it
of
is.
hyperlink right there, one of my requirements for PRs is that you need to actually link to an issue, especially during October. And it's
Cool.
mainly because we get a lot of contribution, a lot of interest. We get a lot of folks who are just like, "Hey, I would love to contribute to this project. Make me part of the org." And I'm like, okay, like what value are you bringing? Like, it's not like I don't want to interview you, but I don't want to add people for the sake of adding people, and I don't want to assign you to issues for the sake of assigning because even myself, like I forget or I get busy, and I can't contribute.
To
So
someone who's
right
not
up,
familiar with GitHub orgs, like what's that
yeah, yeah.
downside? Like yeah, like if I'm added to an org, what does that mean?
Yeah, so to zoom out, like most people probably have a GitHub account. It's probably a given at this point. I think the number is like 71 million users worldwide. We just updated it last week. So 71 million people have a GitHub account. You can put repositories up there. You can do whatever you want. With organizations, you could build I guess a quote unquote team is probably how I describe it. You can create, well, organizations are a little different than teams, so which I'll get into. But if you went to, if you go up to OpenSauced and click on just OpenSauced, the organization name, here you can see all the repositories for the org, and then we could have the people as part of the org. So like
Okay.
if you work at a company, there's a chance that you probably have an organization on GitHub. You got a bunch of repos, or maybe you have two or three or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And these are all different projects that live in this domain, which is open source. Now, the beauty of this is I can create co-maintainers in the org. So like folks who had admin access can also be part to have control to create repos and access the organization. So here's a small open source team that we have right now. And these are folks who have, these are folks who have publicly, in your settings, you have to actually say you want to publicly show
Okay.
on the project. So these are the people who actually went into settings and then publicly show that they're part of the open source org. There is another three, I believe, that yeah, I think it's 8 people that are on the list that aren't showing. But
Name them.
this
Let's no.
yeah, to each their own. But yeah, so these are folks that have access that mostly have commit access actually, other than Brandon. He's Triage team, but they all have access to create repos and have access to org level access to things. So like one of the quick ones that I can mention is like actions. As a solo user, you have 2,000 minutes, but as a team org, you have 3,000 minutes for the org.
Okay.
So you get extra time. You also get access to code spaces. Now, code spaces currently is only organization access only. So if I enabled code spaces for my entire organization, which I hope to do soon, so anybody who wants to contribute can just open up a code space and they're good to go. Um, Individual access will come soon, but we ship to the org access first because we wanted to actually
What's code
make
spaces
that.
again?
Yeah, so if you just hit the period key on your keyboard,
Oh, that. Yeah. Okay, so
yeah,
this is
so it's
called code
basically having
spaces.
a VS Code environment
Cool.
inside your project. So this is a serverless environment, so you can actually open the terminal and run open source. But if I turned it on, because I do get from free access, I just haven't turned it on because the free access is so small.
Okay.
Then you'd be able to run open source in the browser, make contributions from your account, and then push that back up to the org. Um, there's some limitations where you have to be like a member of the org to do that and stuff like that. Otherwise, you have to fork it. But this is like the entire code base of the project. This right here in the browser, ready
Yeah.
to contribute to.
Yeah, and you can create branches from here, right? You can do pull requests. Like we
Yep.
actually made a GitHub action with Colby Fayok on stream the other day for the Halloween show, and yeah,
Oh, nice.
it worked great. We were able to do our commit and merge our pull requests all in here. It was super cool. I just never remember that this is called code spaces. To me, it's just the you push the period and you get VS Code in the browser thing. So
Oh, our marketing's been exposed.
awesome.
Um, but yeah, I forgot what I was getting at. Oh yeah, yeah, contribution. So I basically just I tried to lower the bar of entry to contribute to open source to
Okay.
be an example for other projects. So like if you're starting a new project and you're like, oh, this is a thing I've been working on my own. Like I've never done anything to make contributions, and then one day you get a contributor, and then you're like, oh, I guess I should write documentation on how to contribute. And then you stop writing code because all the stuff has to be done. So like if you click on open source, what I've done is I've created a couple different things to make it easy. I would love to actually sort of package this up so anybody can like incept and grab these files.
Cool.
But like the biggest thing is the contributing MD. And the one thing that I'll probably note is that there's no contributing MD in this tree. And the reason for that is because if you go up to the top, go to Insights, up on the right, yep, and then Community, you'll see that I do have a contributing MD. It's just not in the open source project, and it's because I want the same contributing MD for all my projects.
Got it.
So it's
Okay.
actually in my .github repo.
Okay. Is a .github repo this? No, that's different. I was gonna say, is that the same thing that lets you do the profile page? But no,
Yeah.
that's like your name,
So
I think.
yeah, so technically it's the same pattern. It's just an entire repo for that same pattern. So like
Got it.
where you do pull request templates or where you do GitHub action workflows, it's in your .github folder.
Interesting.
But GitHub has also adopted the same repo structure, so that way you can rather than repeat yourself, like their code of conduct for the open source, it's all the same for every repo. My licenses, they're the same for every repo. It's all MIT. So rather than repeat myself, I've been able to just create this. And Vortex actually kicked this off. We have a whole YouTube video on this setup,
Okay.
youtube.com/opensauced. I should probably mention because I said YouTube a couple times, but that's the actual YouTube channel.
All one word.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not consistent. The
Okay.
URL has a hyphen in it. But yeah, the you can see that little secret .github repo. Um,
Got it. Yeah, I'm not
yeah,
following you here. I'm definitely following you personally.
uh,
Um,
exposed.
I didn't
It's
know
like a
this was a
Mr.
thing
Beast
until just
challenge.
now. Yeah, I didn't. I did not know you had a second channel essentially. Awesome.
Yeah, it's the it's funny about YouTube. It's like I've always dragged my heels on the open source channel because I did not want to try to work on a second channel while I was still doing my first channel, which is BDougie. And the way I've been doing these is I actually I do straight the stream. So I stream, and then I create a YouTube video during the stream, which is Issues
Got
with
it.
Brian is the gimmick. But it gets me to actually produce YouTube videos every week.
Nice.
Well, every week 3 weeks ago. Um,
I wasn't gonna say
but
anything,
yeah, but anyway, when I'm on stream, I try to produce at least one video each stream,
cool.
because one, I can answer questions that get asked all the time, but two, I get to share about the project and make sure it's reachable and searchable somewhere.
Nice.
So pulling in a whopping 16 to 25 views each video, but
Hey,
those are my
you
power
just
users.
you just got one more sub. Gonna be your most loyal and faithful upvoter, thumbs upper. I don't know. I'll be there for you, buddy. I got you. Um, we were looking at the the contributing
Yeah, the
markdown
contributing
file.
MD. Yeah,
So
so this is some context that I've mostly taken from things like open source.guide, and like the Ken C. Dodd Egghead course as well.
okay,
Um, which is like do your best, basically, to sum it up that way. But it always starts with like read the instructions first before you go jump in and do a contribution because every project is different. So
mm,
some projects want you to name your branches with your handle in it, your GitHub username. Some want to have your issue number inside the branch. Some don't care. Some don't want you to. They want you to fork everything. Um, and then there's other things about rebase and all this. Like, everybody's got their nuance on how to contribute to their project. So my recommendation is like ask questions or read first.
got it.
And like my whole thing is like talk first, commit later. So like if there's a Discord or if there's already an issue, like it's always going to be better. It's going to be a better end result if you just say something first and you like announce your presence as opposed to like you go into a deep hole to go try to contribute to React and then like come back out of it and be like, I don't know what happened. And then go back in the hole next weekend and it's like, okay, it works. Open up the PR and people are like, who are you? What is this? How did you get here? Also, why did you not follow the contributing MD? And like you just wasted like 2 weeks of like work because you just never said hello. So like first step is always like hello, I exist. I'm just gonna be poking around. Don't mind me. But the fact that you say hello, it's less because it's like okay, so open source has a problem with spam, which is like surprise spam is all over the internet. I get tons. I maintain another project on GitHub, which gets tons of spam all day, every day. We have 360 PRs open at the moment. So what I did is I created a script to go through all the PRs that don't have the proper context in the PR,
Got it.
and then I label them, and then I label them, and then I comment on the PR and say, hey, thanks but no thanks. Like read, like fill in the blanks, please.
Got it.
And then if you don't, I just go ahead and close it because I can close 100 PRs in one sitting versus going through every 300 and be like, oh, let me ask you one question or a follow up. And like I think folks like if everybody knows like Sandra Sorhas, who's a
Yeah.
prolific Node.js
Super
open source contributor.
prolific. Yeah.
Yeah, he is very, very like has a very strict contribution strategy. And if you like don't do one thing, it's like automatic closure. And I respect that in so many ways because he has so many projects that just have contributions coming in nonstop
Yeah.
that he doesn't have the bandwidth to be able to like coach you through. And I think this is the part of like open source where like you mentioned like the anxiety of trying to contribute to a React. Yeah, he's going to show up like almost every hour
Yeah.
of a release.
Yeah. He's just constantly building something. Super impressive.
Yeah.
Has made so many tools that I have on my Mac and everything. Like he's made.
Yep.
Yeah.
I use
So
Gipski as well.
nice.
But but like my mention of him is like I don't think anybody should be. You could easily go contribute to Syndrae's, which I said Sandre, but I meant Syndre. Syndrae's any of his repos and get a bad taste in your mouth because he closed my PR. He never took a look at it. And he could also get the same bad taste in his mouth, like, oh, another low effort PR. I'm
Mm,
quitting open source altogether. So he's actually protected himself by automating all the nuanced things of like the low effort stuff. And just said like, I'm sorry, I don't have bandwidth to go coach you through this. But if anybody, and this is like free advice, talk about like contributing to a project already owned by a company. If you became Sendre's like guard of like, okay, hey, Sendre closed your PR, but by the way, here's a good way to go. Like, here's how to actually fix this. Like, you could build a whole another ecosystem, open source ecosystem of just like supporting people who just don't know what they're doing.
yeah.
And it's like everybody who does open source, which is why open source is a thing and why I'm hoping to build out documentation and like help people along the way. And it's less of like a get your 4 PRs and get a t-shirt, which I think is an excellent initiative during October. But what about November and December? How do we sustain that excitement throughout the rest of the year? And that's what I'm trying to do with open source. So
It's
that was a
awesome.
that was a rambly bit, but what I'm getting at is we don't have to go through all this, but essentially this leads everybody to the issues. And then if you get to an issue and you're like, hey, I want to contribute, I have a saved reply. So if you go back to the original issue we were looking at, um, which yeah, 1160. There. Yep. There we go. So if you go to the comment box all the way at the bottom, there is on the all the way on the right, there's a little arrow with a drop down up on the yeah. So these are save replies. And what I do in my
Cool.
project is I create a save reply, which is if someone comes in and is like, hey, I'm excited about open source, I want to contribute, I would love to take this on. I have a save reply, which is how to assign yourself to an issue, which by default in GitHub you can't assign yourself to an issue unless you're part of the org or part of the team, which we covered earlier. So
Right.
for that reason, I think if you scroll up, someone probably commented already, um, which is how to assign the issue. Oh, there we go. So there you go. The comment where it says dot take. If you go above that one, I wonder if there we go.
Ah.
So Vortex got it, which led to have you take a look at a contributing doc. So like this is a canned reply of, hey, just read the docs. It will teach you how to assign the issues, but we don't tell you how to assign your issues because if we tell you, then we'll assign the issue to ourselves. But it also forces you to read this part about issues and how to assign yourself using dot take.
Got it. If you plan to contribute a change based on an open issue, please assign yourself by commenting on the following word take. Issues that are not assigned are assumed open. That's awesome. Is this a common pattern found across open source projects, or is this like pretty much an open source thing?
Uh, so I actually took this from Pandas, which is a machine learning Python project.
Right.
They so I work at GitHub, so I had a conversations with them about some of their issues with GitHub. Everybody's got them, literally and
Ha ha
figuratively. Um,
ha.
but they had something very similar where they have a ton of people who want to contribute, but they don't have the time to go and like assign each one of like everybody who wants to assign themselves to an issue. They don't have the bandwidth to do that because it's a
Right.
huge project. So I coached them on how to build a GitHub action to do this exact thing. So as soon as this guy types dot take, you see the GitHub action actually assigned it to him.
Right.
And not only did it assign it, it also comes back with a comment that says, thanks for taking this on. If you haven't already done this, join the Discord. And the way that that's powered, if you go into our got GitHub folder inside this project,
So see, does this? Oh, and it actually does it does assign him.
yes. So
Cool.
now we can triage issues like seamlessly without trying to figure out what is up for grabs.
Got it.
So if you
Is
go
it
to
under
.github,
actions? Okay.
yep, and then oh, is it? I wonder if you can't see them because you're not part of the org. Oh no, you're in .github. That's why. Um, you got to go to OpenSauced. OpenSauced.
Ah, okay. Here we go.
Yep, and then workflows, and then triage YAML. So this is the workflow that allows you to assign yourself. And this is not a feature you can do on GitHub by default. So I had to opt into this by doing an action. I did actually a whole YouTube video on how I built this 3 times using Docker and compose it, run steps, and all these different flavors of action. So it was like my DevRel sample project to talk about a feature.
Nice.
But I use it
Smart.
all the time. And then you can see my little message on line 18, which points us to Discord and gives you a link, a little clever link, which I need to actually make that into an open source link someday. Um, but yeah, there it is. This is the secret sauce to getting yourself assigned to an issue, and then like that's your onboarding step. So like if you go on the issue, and I don't know who you are, you just should have showed up, or Vortex doesn't know who you are. We kick you to the contributing MD, so that way we can know you've read, or at least you've noted that you've seen it. And then once you've done that, go ahead, like assign yourself, work on the thing. And then in the contributing MD, like we ask to fork the project. We also ask that you don't touch the main branch, so work on a branch. Even on your fork, work on a branch because there's other cool things of like if you go ahead and fork this project real quick,
Yeah.
there's like really cool built-in features inside of GitHub to keep your project in sync. And if you're not doing it the right way, you sort of just obliterate history, and it makes it so much harder to help you. which is a whole nother problem of doing open source is like making sure everybody's on the same page.
Okay.
So at the moment, this says this branch is up to date with OpenSauce.main, but you get this cool little contribute drop down. And then you also get this little fetch from upstream too as well. And this is the button that the reason why I want you to touch the main branch is because this button works magically to keep everything up to date, like for you. And I used to have a GitHub action that did this, but now I deleted the GitHub action to point people to the UI, which is like I have some pull inside of GitHub. I want to say that this feature showed up because of me, but it was actually already in progress when I started asking about it because I built the action. I talked about the action like all last year, and then we shipped this feature last November, which is actually last October.
Nice. So basically, this will if I make any changes to my fork of OpenSauced, this button will no longer be disabled. I'll be able to open a pull request with my changes. If you right now on the actual OpenSauced project push a change, commit something into main, then I can fetch upstream and bring it into what I've got, right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep. That's how it works.
Sorry for saying hi to chat. I did not mean to cut you off. I apologize.
Yeah, I was going to take a break anyway. No, but yeah, this is all detailed in the contributing MD in the docs, which is trying to push you towards a path of like, this is how open source can work.
Okay.
Like, it's not the penultimate way of doing it in every project, but like knowing these sort of basics of like assigning yourself, asking a question, opening the PR. Like, if we go back to that issue and take a look at that PR, like the contribution also falls within our guidelines as well, which is like we just want the individual, like you're making visual changes, dropping a screenshot or recording, tell us if it's a bug or feature or fix, whatever it is. Show us exactly, like give us like the sort of, which it's sort of they haven't finished this. It's still a draft PR, which is another feature on GitHub. But like ultimately what I'd like them to add is like their approach, which I actually gave you in the chat. I gave you a link to a good PR and a bad PR.
Okay.
You actually click the good PR because like this one already shows up. Like actually, you show us both of them. My whole thing is like if you provide value and context, like you're pretty much golden. Of like getting your contribution and free mentorship, which I think a lot of people undersell the idea of mentorship in open source. Because like if you don't know React and you go contribute to MDX or some other React project, like now you're getting skill set that you could not get on the job. You can actually get through open source. Or if you're like, oh man, I wish I knew better test. It's like, oh, why don't you go write tests for an open source project? Get real life work experience, put that on your resume. Like literally take this PR 1129, drop it on your resume as like, I can work with teams. And what's amazing about this, Black Girl Bytes made this contribution. If you look at the description, like there's actually, she actually created the drop down for the user avatar.
Okay.
So if you go in, I think she has a screenshot down there, but yeah, up on the up right. So she basically all the stuff was in the nav bar, and she created a drop down for us. So pretty trivial stuff. I guess not even trivial because not everybody comes from the same level. It was trivial for her because she did it in like a day. As soon as she assigned that she had a PR later. But if you look at the description, there's actually a description. Right. And like so many contributions, I don't know what it is about people, but they just make so much assumptions to like the code documents itself, or you should get how this works. Like I'm just gonna open the PR and walk away. And if your description says, well, it says this is my first PR to open source. Shout out to Black Girl Bytes. Yeah. But if this PR just says this adds a drop down, then I'm just like, okay, what's gonna happen is 6 months from now, someone's gonna say, hey, I want to work on this drop down and fix it. How do I get context and like why you made this decision or why this was? And I'm gonna be like, this is an open source contribution, and here's the PR. It's one line fix, but they have no context here. I have 100% confidence if somebody goes to fix the dropdown or it breaks in the future, like you've solved so many bugs, that someone could open up this PR because it's all on GitHub and can say, hey, this is exactly what happened. This is why it happened. This is who I can reach out to because like Black Girl Bytes is not disappearing from the internet. Like we now have context of how this works. But if you look at the other PR I provided to you, which is the contribution to the CLI, it got merged in. Add standard dot. Well, anyway, you can say that
Standardized
word.
pagination to the code spaces
Yes.
command. Yeah.
Yeah. What does that mean? What is that? There's no context there.
Mm.
And there's context between the contributors, the maintainers, and this contributor, because this was not a first kind of contribution. You could tell because it would say first time contributor in that
Okay.
badge there. But if it's a first time contributor, I think if you went to Black Girl Bytes, it should say first time contributor on hers.
Where?
Nah, it just says contributor.
Okay.
Yeah, I think once we merge it in, her status changes from contributor to
Got
from
it.
first timer to
Okay.
contributor. Um, but I guess what I'm getting at is like all that context, all the conversation we were able to have back and forth about this. Now, if you wanted to change the drop down, you now know exactly how it works.
Right.
And it's more than just looking at the files changes. Because I think a lot of people lean too heavily on that tab and not never put anything here. And I mentioned this because this came from a conversation I had with my first engineering manager in San Francisco. I worked at a company and I complained in a one-on-one is like, I open up PRs and no one reads them. Like no one reviews my code. Like how do I get people to review my code? And he explained to me is like, hey, well, one, your PR says nothing. It just has a bunch of code changes. And I was like, oh, well, the code should document itself. This is when I was a junior, so by the way. So I had a different attitude. But he was like, yeah, if you just in your description write out the situation, complication, question, answer, everybody will jump in and review it, which is SCQA is my acronym. And ever since I started doing that with my blog posts, with my conference talks, with my PRs, with my opened issues, I get responses like right away,
Can you say
no
that
matter what
again?
project I contribute to. Uh,
SCQA
SCQA,
stands for.
situation, complication, question, answer.
Awesome.
I have a YouTube video. I bet if you search for SCQA, it'll probably show up because I don't think many people are YouTubing about
Let's
SCQA.
see. Situation, complication, question, answer. Cool.
Yeah.
Videos.
Oh, you look at that. People are talking about this. It's getting
Jerks.
popular.
Storytelling made simple. Stories SCQA.
And
Interesting.
that's the so obviously my video is not as popular as these, but I stand corrected. But yeah,
Cool.
that I go over this in that context too as well
Got
of
it.
getting your PR reviewed. But it's absolutely amazing how many people just attempt to do open source and then walk in with like, well, it's not a, it's I totally understand it too as well because like you don't know what you don't know. So like you open up a PR and it's like I can't wait to get this merged. Like I finally did open source contribution. Close. Sorry, won't fix. Don't need this. And then you're like, screw that. I'm never doing open source ever again. And that's the experience everybody like so many different people have.
Mm.
To like I've been talking a lot. I'm curious, have you done any open source contributions? Have you any experience on that?
Very little. And actually, I would love it if we could kind of look through a project. I'm thinking maybe Slinkity, just since Ben Holmes is in the chat. Ben, I'm curious if you have any. I have a feeling he has open issues, but like just because I'm a person that I haven't contributed a whole lot to open source, and I think part of it is like I'm very roast me. No, I'm not. No, it's more about roasting me, Ben. It's more about like, all right, I don't know what step to take next. It's not so much like, look at this ridiculous issue that Ben wrote. It's more like, okay, now what? It feels like I understand the steps and I've done them before, but I often kind of like just kind of get stuck somewhere in there. And I would love to like talk it through a bit. Okay, awesome. We got some amazing issue logs there. I do want to touch on,
Yeah.
on Ben's questions. He has a couple of questions. He
Okay.
dropped one in the I wonder thing, and we can pick that up in just a sec. But I do want to grab interesting. My setup is PRs don't need to say much, but they should always link to a detailed issue that's being resolved. If it's only partially resolved, bullet the changes made and what's left to do. So a bit of a different philosophy
Yeah.
around how detailed a comment
And
needs to be.
I stand by that too, because if you can have the context and the conversation from the issue, that's another step if it's
Mm.
linked to the PR. Because what happens is once the PR gets merged, if you're using merge commits, or actually if you merge on GitHub, you automatically have a link. So if you like went to my commit history for OpenSauce, every commit that gets pushed to main branch that wasn't a quick fix that I made when everybody was sleeping, um, is has a hyperlink to the PR that it changed. And this is true. So click on the 1261 commits link. You just hover. Oh
Oh,
yeah, you got it. So yep, you're there. So you see this all those pound 1284 pound 1283. Those are PRs.
okay.
So anybody can go and say, "Oh, Dependabot's been having a crazy month. Let's check this PR and see what it broke," which is a common occurrence because Dependabot will merge in something, it breaks something, you can't make notes anymore. So now we can go back, look at the PR, which Dependabot does a great job of writing context in their PR. Thank you, Dependabot. The shout out to the bot. Um, but all that context is here. So like that notes box, Black Girl Bites is PR. Like everybody can go back to the commit history and do a git bisect and find out, oh, it broke here.
Mm.
Okay, so or when was the last time this file was changed? Okay, it was this PR. Here's a conversation. And if it's not on the PR, you can click through on all my PRs to the issue if the conversation is over there. And sometimes we put Discord links in case there's like a Discord chat or a screenshot
Oh,
that
that's
a
cool.
discussion was made.
Yeah, it makes sense.
You can also link discussions as well now. So if the discussion was made before the issue was open or before the PR was opened,
Got
like
it.
all that's linkable on GitHub. So like choose your own adventure. I'm just sort of trying always to push people towards like doing the right thing, making sure the context is there because it's not about like it's never about green squares. Like green squares are cool, it's fun, they're cool and memey and stuff like that. But if you're just doing it for a green square or for a t-shirt, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. Like because that's going to lead you to burnout. Also, if you're a maintainer and green squares are the reason people are here for, that's also going to it's like a drive-by PR, which what we call
Yeah.
them, um, which is someone contributes and they just never come back or never show up again, and it becomes like a challenge to like get any context on how things work because
Mm.
this person's like no longer they don't exist on the internet. Um, and
Got it.
that's part of the reason why Sindre he creates so much automation to balance the contribution, so that way he doesn't have to deal with drive-by PRs and uh, contributor over demanding his free time.
He
But
raises the bar of like
yeah,
what you can get over so that he's not spending hours a
yeah.
day just swatting spam away.
But I wanted to jump in this linkity, but I wanted to show off the pull request template since Ben made a mention of that with the
Yeah.
checkboxes.
Yeah. So it would be in the .github here
Yeah. So also
or
going to point out that it's not in the .github. I did this intentionally. I didn't correct you because I wanted to show that it's actually in the .github folder because that same pull request template. So if you go to the .github, you'll see
they
the
go
pull
one
request
level
template.
deeper. Okay.
Yeah, and the reason why it's in this repo again is because I want it on every repo. So no matter
Um,
when the repo is created, I want this pull request template to coerce people to do the right thing.
got it.
And so if you have the thing called pull request template.md, it this is what shows up when you first open up PR. And the reason for this is because like very clearly, I want you to check the box to tell me what is it you're doing. Because like so many people open up PRs and it's like, hey, I noticed there's no lint fix on this, or there's no new linter added, because there was a time where I got back-to-back PRs of people adding a new linter, the new hotness, or adding Husky to my project, a pre-commit hook. And my question to them is like, what box does this check? And
Mm.
where's the issue where you had the conversation of us getting a new linter or pre-commit hook? Because that was the reason why I did the take. This is why I had pull request template is because I know as soon as I add Husky, I'm gonna have a second contributor come in and be like, oh, I can't get past this Husky thing. How can someone pair with me to get past this pre-commit hook? Which is why we have no pre-commit hooks in the project, is because I'd rather have the conversation in the PR about your linting or have the action update it, as opposed to force you to fix it before you can push up to GitHub, which is a horrible experience.
Got it.
And I'll die on that hill.
That's fair. Alan asks, is it safe to assume you have a first intro to contributions video link?
Yeah, I would say Hashnode was that open source symposium was the most recent one I've done. It was like a 20-minute conversation I had with Sam, who runs community over there.
Oh,
Um,
Sycamore? Yeah.
yeah, so it's a YouTube video, and I don't quite, yeah, it should be that long. It's like a 3 hour video.
This one?
Yeah, so they have the whole conferences up there. Not short and to the point, but there's also another how to get your PR reviewed, which doesn't cover first time contributor. Yeah, there I am. Looks familiar.
So it's gonna skip to you, but the whole video will be there. So this video is for if someone's trying to contribute for the first time, is what you're saying?
Yeah, the context is how to get your PR reviewed is the name of the talk.
Cool.
So I talk about how to find issues. I talk about open source. I talk about how to approach making contributions. And then I also cover SCQA as well. I
Nice.
don't call out to it specifically, but I cover like adding value.
Awesome. Okay. Awesome. You said you wanted to touch on something. Oh, it was just that contributing. It was this one, right?
Yeah,
You
it was
wanted to touch
basically
on
this
this
is a
before
template.
Slinkity.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I just want to kind of like talk through, um, if that's cool.
Yeah, I've recently made a contribution to Slinkity. Slinkity.
Nice.
I don't know what words are hard today.
All good. We got Anthony is another contributor to Slinkity. He was in the chat a little earlier. Not sure if he's still here. I know he had a stream today. But both Ben Holmeses are contributors. That's pretty cool.
Excellent. I did not realize Ben was a twin.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. And our friend Thomas is too. Great. So yeah. So if we go to the issues, that's kind of what I'm concerned with. So
Yeah. It like I would even take a step back further.
okay.
And normally when I recommend people contribute to open source is don't start with issues. Start with
Okay.
conversation. So like talk first. So like if Slinkity has a Discord, which I believe they do.
You're eliminating half of the developers from the pool already, Brian.
Yeah.
This is brutal.
Yeah, because like, chances are Anthony and Ben are chatting publicly in Discord about the future of Slinkity. And you could be like, hey, I want to add a pre-commit hook because I think those are the best things ever. So I'm going to open a PR, I'm going to contribute to that, and then they're going to be like, yeah, no thanks, won't fix. So if you just take a look at like things like roadmap conversations, as much as I would love to say everything shows up on GitHub, like in the GitHub projects, if there's like a 1.0 roadmap or whatever, like that's a great place to look to as well to kind of get an idea of like, is this contribution even going to matter? Because like if I was working on a team with a PM and an engineering manager, and I was just making random contributions to the app that was like sustaining the entire business, everybody would be raising questions, be like, "Hey, Brian, why are you like changing the hex code of the purples everywhere? Like, could you like ship real drop downs and WYSIWYG editors and stuff like that? Like, that's what's going to make money. And not that this Slinkity needs to make money, but it's like where can you provide value day one is
Right.
like my thing. So like, yeah, so like reading the context of the README is a great first step. Actually installing it locally. So like the first thing I did when I found Slinkity on stream is I actually tried to do a Slinkity project. And I found out really quickly that I didn't know what Slinkity was. So like I would have went straight to the issues and be like, I know what Slinkity is. And I had this assumption that Slinkity was like something completely different, which it wasn't, the sort of glue between 11D and things like Vite and stuff like that. And I was like, I should probably build something with Slinkity so that way I have all the context. Same thing in OpenSauced. Like if you don't log into OpenSauced before you contribute to the project, you're going to be really surprised when like you're just blindly making contribution and you haven't like figured out how to get the thing running locally.
You have no context.
Yeah, there's no context. So if you're out context, how do you provide value?
Right.
So like going through the quick start, running Slinkity local, like creating like the generic, documentation, Slinky app or whatnot. Like that's all the first steps I would do. And then once you have that context, like even the demo that's sort of like stated there, I'm not sure if if that's a YouTube video or a previous Ben talk, but like watching Ben's talks, like if you
Right.
haven't got that far in understanding that, like you're basically setting yourself up for just like a quick won't fix label and closing. Which if you're still listening, Ben, like my recommendation is like if this is a random person asking to re-architect your stuff in the TypeScript or whatever, like the big hefty stuff everybody wants to do to get their contributions out there and to get green squares, get deep green squares. Like that'd be like, I hey, thanks, no thanks. Go chat in the Discord or ask questions first. Like, thanks for the contribution, but please open issues. Like that's always my push for everybody who tries to get involved in this stuff is you got to be a part of the community and you got to show up to show value. And it's got to be less. It's got to be. It can't just be about you just getting a quick contribution.
Got
Um,
it.
so I'll step off my soapbox for a second
No,
to take
no,
a
no,
breath.
it's good. So chat first. Like reach out, say hi. Hey, I'm interested in contributing, but I'm not. I might not be sure exactly where yet. Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
I'm interested. Is there anything that you yeah, like? Are the issues a good place to go look? And they might say yes or no, or we've actually got some stuff that we haven't logged just yet. Sounds good, Ben. Enjoy. Um, so yeah, so that sounds good. I like this stuff where this is helpful. Not every project's gonna have this, but this is good to kind of see. All right, I can see where they're going eventually. They actually just confirmed that they have Tailwind support. I'm pretty sure. So we might be able to open up an issue just to move that up into the checkboxes. We actually had him on stream on Friday, and we used Tailwind with it. It's not documented, so I haven't checked it yet. That makes sense. That makes sense. Ben smart. Um, so yeah,
yeah,
that's a great first step. Is just start up that relationship in a sense, and that sounds like a good way to go in general, so that like you're both kind of at least friendly with each other, so that when there's feedback given and like the intention is known.
yeah, yeah. And I would go out to say like the internet's a really weird and scary place.
Yeah.
And you definitely can like write a comment on Reddit on some forum on the React forum, on the subreddit, and like you just wait for sort of like everybody to come out of the woodwork and like tell you you're wrong.
Yep.
Like it's the same thing with GitHub issues, but not to that level of extent. But like there's that same fear of like, oh, everybody knows what they're talking about until they're not. So like my approach is like you don't have to present yourself as an expert, but you just have to present yourself because like folks on the internet can like this sort of show up out of nowhere and tell you, you know, it's funny because like OpenSauced has been working. It's been around for 5 years, so this is before
Oh
hooks.
wow.
This is before any popular design system. This is before so many different things. Like we're still doing class components too as well. All the stuff that we've sort of learned in React, it was all prior to that. So every year I would just update OpenSauced. I would use OpenSauced. I'd update OpenSauced to like the latest, greatest React. And a lot of people will come through and be like, why are you building your own design system? Like, why don't you just use Tailwind? And it's like, oh, well, because this thing's been around long enough that like it's a way more effort to use Tailwind. Like, if you want to fork this thing and create your own OpenSauced with Tailwind, I would love to see that. Like, I would happy to take that contribution, but I know I won't do that because there's
Yeah.
no value in me rebuilding this entire thing on a thing I don't use day to day. Technically, my actual website is Tailwind BW Live, but besides the point, it's like being able to like show up and like show that you're not going to disappear is like the
Hmm.
biggest thing. My biggest fear is to have a contributor come through, give me some of the best contribution, and just completely disappear on me. And then now I'm stuck with like, okay, I guess I'll figure out how Kubernetes works.
Oh
Some
god.
people know how to do it, which is like, and those are usually the contributions you get. It's like the big hefty, you're doing it wrong. Here's a big hefty change on how you can use my serverless function architecture,
It,
or use my favorite new tool.
it sounds like someone like buying you a plant, like a beautiful plant, but then they're like, "Oh, by the way, this needs a ton of light and a very specific amount of water. Good luck, it's yours." And
Yeah,
now like it's your burden now to like you're just gonna kill the plan at this point. Like, yeah, if I have to do a Kubernetes thing, I've never touched that, so that would be absolutely my nightmare. So yeah,
Yeah, it's
that made that real for
not
me.
needed.
Thank you for those
But I did want
follows.
to focus back on Ben's contributions.
Okay.
Um, and I wanted to really take a detour and just go to if you go to the top URL instead of /issues,
Yeah.
type in /contribute.
Contribute.
And here you can actually see stuff that's not assigned, but also good first issues or documentation updates.
Oh, I did not know
So
about
this
this
is
URL.
so this is a feature, and we have a link from OpenSauced as well to get here. Um,
Cool.
so when you're in our repository dashboard, but yeah, so like my recommendation is go to this one because it's not assigned and it's a good first issue.
Got it. 3 of 5 tasks open. So is that this bit?
Yeah, so it looks like he is writing some tests. So we got
Okay.
some merged PRs. So he's got link stuff down there, number 25 and 24, and 26. And it looks like he's just looking for some help to write some unit test. Like it seems pretty straightforward. You've got some, and so my approach here would be like, okay, so we've got some solved problems. It's already attached to this issue. My next step, if like I already chatted with Ben, he was in chat, he had to step away. So, but he was in chat earlier. It's like he knows we're looking at this. He's like, hey Ben, found something I want to work on. Let me go ahead and grab the 11 data converter unit test. I've never used a data converter. So like once I basically say, hey, I'd probably actually say, hey Ben, I'm gonna try out the data converter because I don't know how that works. If you have any documentation on like how this works, let me know. If you don't, I'm happy to write it. Like again, my first comment into this issue would be something valuable. It's like I don't know anything about the data converter. I want to help you out with this, but if you don't have any documentation, I'll write that and I'll write the test. How about that?
Got it.
And then what usually happens, especially from the maintainers, they're like, "Oh yeah, I've got a whole Google Doc of like me writing this for 6 months. I just haven't had time to actually throw it into docs. Could you just take that and like proofread it, massage this, make a contribution to the docs?" And then now you basically look like a hero because you've like, and this is like actual examples I've gotten too as well of like me going to contribute, and then the maintainer is like, oh yeah, I was going to do this, but like I got stuck on this other harder problem.
Right.
So like, could you just take all this code, make sure it works, test it, or here's some tests. Could you just write a couple more? And like usually what happens, especially first time contributors, is like you can get some hand holding or mentorship in the process. But it starts with like, hey, I'm a human. I'm happy to provide valuable human work.
Right.
Um, would you mind if I could ask you questions in the Discord or follow up here if I get stuck? Or what's a good time to follow, like go back in the Discord, back, what's a good time to follow up? Like you work during the day. Like, are you available this time or that time? Can we jump
Got
on a
it.
call? Like it's all stuff you could do to like unblock yourself and get a contribution. It's the same thing you do if you worked full time at Peloton with Ben. Like if you were working on the same Peloton feature or whatever, you'd be like, "Hey Ben, I want to work on this. You were here before me. Do you have time if we could sync up? Can you answer my
Cool.
questions?" It's literally the same stuff. And like this is why I would say like once you go through this process of writing a test for this or writing documentation, add that to your CV or your cover letter. I do open source. Here's my PR. It's linkable. It's on the internet. Slinkity is being used by 3 companies or whatever the number is. Um,
Hundreds and thousands, I think. Bet
yeah,
soon though.
but I
Um,
mean, but the power in like the soon though,
yeah.
like you could learn a project in its infancy
Yep.
at like Slinkity, grow into a regular contributor, and then Slinkity becomes the default de facto way. Actually, this is what happened with Gatsby. I contributed to Gatsby pretty early on. The React docs, which I don't know if they still do it today because they just had a refresh last week, but the React docs actually shipped on Gatsby. So the previous one, docs.reactjs.org, I have the one no Gatsby at the time. I was pretty like in depth in like that sort of ecosystem and static site generation and set Jamstack that I was able to ride a wave into my career of just being an expert at all this React next level stuff.
Oh,
And
that's
it's like
cool.
free next, but after like the initial like create React app
Right.
starter kit. Um, But that could be you with Slinkity, or you or anybody watching in the chat.
Yeah.
Could be that with Slinkity, and you just don't know. You don't know where this thing's gonna go.
Oh yeah. No, I think this yeah, like just as a quick aside, I think the Slinkity, Astro, Svelte kit in a sense, like those kinds of low to no JavaScript ideas are going to be pretty huge. I think that's going to be the next thing. I'm betting on it. Okay, so this is awesome. This like what you just said helps me because I worry. Let's pretend I don't know Ben, right? And I'm looking at this and I'm going
Yeah.
like, this guy's gonna think I'm annoying. Is he's gonna, like, oh, why is this person DMing me? I don't want to, like, I think I'm a very personable person. I have no problem like talking to people, but I worry that I'm wasting their time or anything like that. So hearing you say like, no, like you should reach out first. You should start that communication. And they're looking for help. I mean, like I know they're looking for help, but at the same time, I always think I'm just gonna waste their time. They'd be better off having anyone else come in and help them without the bother. Um,
Yeah.
so like there's some therapy that needs to happen, but also just your coaching me along is super helpful just in kind of like breaking that ice of all right, reaching out in the Discord, like find out where he might be encouraging these kinds of talks, right? Like I'm not sure if he has it here, but he has 11 docs, the issues page. Does he have a contribution contributing? Okay.
Yeah.
Um, cool.
Yeah. So in the first line on
Community
that
Discord.
contributing, yeah, the Discord, awesome that it's linked there. It's got great context, and also even etiquette on how to like create your PRs on the bottom. Probably, I don't even think I have that. Yeah, there's a good amount of context in here,
Yeah.
which it basically just gets you, oh, even about the test suite as well, and how to like run that and set it up, which is all, sometimes that can live somewhere else, like in documentation, but
Okay.
I would say like this is the North Star. If this exists, if it doesn't exist, there's probably something in the docs similar.
Got it.
And if it doesn't exist, my best recommendation is like how can you build this for that maintainer? Because like usually what happens
Got
with
it.
a lot of open source projects is they get started, it's like a weekend fever dream. Someone spends all night, they build a thing, they're like, oh, it works. Cool, let me tweet it. Oh man, it got on Hacker News. Now what do
Yeah.
I do? And then now it's like it's a race to like get to keep people interested, but also fix all the holes in onboarding, like contributing MD, code of conduct, like all that, README. Like so many projects don't have
Mm,
READMEs.
yeah.
So if you went to a project that you used, so you've actually used it, you know context around it, you can basically say, hey maintainer, I found your thing, I love it. Like, can you create a README for this project? And like the answer is yes. You can go to readme.so,
Oh,
pile up
right.
a quick little README, and then say, hey maintainer, I'm the README person. I go to every project and do READMEs. I'd love to be part of this organization. Um,
She's
just
at
let me
GitHub
know
now,
where
right?
else.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. So I actually chatted with Catherine about her trajectory into GitHub on this developing story, which is I do a lot of stuff. So
You do.
it's a podcast I've been doing for longer than I've been doing OpenSauced, and I just ask developers how they became developers, and it's honestly it's one of the best things I did for my career. Completely side tangent is ask people you look up to how they got to where they are. You will unlock so many hidden gems and secrets, and if you record it and put it out publicly, one thing I found out, one of the earliest interviews I had was Kent C. Dodds.
Hmm.
So everybody knows Kent C. Dodds. He's huge. He has large JavaScript courses, testing and stuff like that, React courses. I don't even know where I think I reached out to him like cold and was like, hey, I think it was like his getting involved in open source egghead course. I was like, hey, I've been following your stuff. It's super helpful. I run a podcast called This Developing Story. It's got a small listenership. I would love for you to come on and chat about how you became a developer. If you type in Kinsey Dodd's This Developing Story, it shows up. One of the first times I reached out to somebody who wasn't in my inner circle or my network, and and it was because I was listening to a podcast about somebody else who was saying that folks ask the same questions over and over again about like how you became like how you got your job or whatever the role is. And what most people want to do is they want to be able to like ask that question, like answer the question once, and then like be able to move on with their life. So that's why
Yeah.
Kent actually link number 4 of his links, the Kent C. Dodds AMA. I actually stole that idea from him. I have a repo called AMA as well,
Nice.
and yeah, it's basically because he constantly gets the same questions asked to him, but he wants to be helpful. He doesn't want to say won't fix on somebody. Well, apparently he archived this, um, so I won't fix. But he has a very active Discord, so like you can ask
Yes.
those questions there as well. And I think he has links elsewhere. But I just reached out to him cold. It was like, I don't know who you are. I know who you are. You don't know who I am. And he said yes. I
that,
interviewed
that
him.
that would have been a pretty like baller move to do the other way around. Like, listen, man, I don't know who you
Yeah,
are and who you think you are, but if you want to come on my podcast, that's fine. And it's like, well,
yeah, that's
this is
exactly how I did
it's
it.
quite the alpha move there.
Um, but yeah, him, Ryan Florence, he's also another person, creator of Remix, as well as the React router.
Router, yeah.
I happened to meet him randomly at a meetup, and I was like, "Hey, I do this podcast. Do you want to come on?" And like, he had a very interesting story. Ken had a super awesome story, and it kind of unlocked in something inside of me of like, "Oh yeah, we are human. Like we can do this. Like anybody can do this." Because like these are all just normal human beings. And then also the other thing it did is unlocked me to get inside this like inner circle of React developers.
Mm.
So I eventually got invited to like things like the React Days. They're basically we're all Airbnb, Pinterest, Facebook, a bunch of other companies that are all public now, like Eventbrite. They would in Soma in San Francisco. They would just meet at each office, and they would just have a React core team be there, and you just ask them questions, and be
Wow.
like, oh, if you're stuck on something. So when I worked at Netlify, and I'd get stuck on stuff, I'd be like, hey, React core team, you don't know who I am. You never heard of Netlify, but could you please unblock me on this thing? So I
Wow.
did that, and then a couple months later, when they went to actually ship the new version of the React Docs on Gatsby, they deployed that to Netlify.
Cool.
So like that's there's a whole a lot of serendipity and stuff in open
Connections,
source.
networking, all that
Yeah,
stuff is like, and not just networking for the sake of, hi, you are a person that would benefit me to
yeah,
know, but just genuine connections. Like like I think we've kind of got a connection now. Did I say excitement an hour earlier? For yes, we are an hour earlier. Sorry, Nino Pepper, Thomas, good to see you. Yeah, most of my colleagues are French, so it's thrown me off a whole bunch too. But yeah, like I met you through things, but now like I don't know, I want to be involved with
yeah.
you through more
We
stuff.
at Chance we sat at the same table at Jamstack conference,
Yep,
Jamstack NYC.
yep.
Which honestly I forgot about that entire night. It was like
That was a
a
great night.
complete blur. I remember it actually. What's funny about that because I remember I ended up talking to a VC the entire walk over to the bar, and I'm like, oh, how do I ditch this VC? Because like they were there because they wanted to invest in Netlify, and they knew that I was like former employee and had like a bunch of questions about the founders, and I was like, oh, it's a blah blah
And
blah.
I'm
It's
like,
like,
hi, I liked your talk.
yeah. I think they even sat with us at the table, and
I
they
think that
ended
we
up walking away eventually. But I was like, okay, cool. And then like I ended up just like chatting with a bunch of people from New York about Jamstack
yeah.
stuff, and I think I just joined GitHub a couple months prior to as well. Yeah,
You
small world.
forget about what did you? Yeah. Like just having met you there. I met Colby Fayok at that same conference and everything. Like just
Really?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
I didn't even run into him today. I had no idea it was there.
yeah. We were both in a Wes Boss Gatsby workshop that we both happened to take. But yeah,
That's
like
awesome.
I miss that about real conferences, but I feel like we're getting a little bit of that back through like Twitch and everything. Like
Yeah. There is definitely a cabal of Twitch live coders, folks who we all know each other. But also like I'd say the React contributor days or whatever it was called. They do that again, but it's called a React working group and
mm,
it's all online.
got it.
Um this is like another free offer for everybody who wants to contribute to React. But the one thing I noticed React 17 was shipped last year. They had a call out which was like, "Hey, we have React 17, minor changes. If you're if you work at a company or if you work on a large open source project with React, or just a project in React, could you use React 17 and let us know feedback?" the amount of people that gave feedback was actually shockingly low. And it's the same thing with Vue.js. Vue.js did the same thing when they shipped whatever the last version was. Like a public call out, hey, new version of Vue, who wants to try it? And very few people like raise their hand and say, I'll try it. Like we'll offer our company off as tribute. Like one, you should always say that if you're a junior engineer, mid-level, senior engineer, I would like race to create a branch which is called React 18 and go test out React 18. Because what usually happens is if I test this out, then my company gets mentioned on stage at the next conference, which then gets more people to know we're doing React, gets more engineers to apply, and it's a nice cycle of us. And that's like the whole company and open source thing is like something that a lot of people get, but then a lot of people don't get. It's like if you work at a company, it's like I can't do open source because the company doesn't want me to do open source because I don't know, they're paying me for my time or whatever. Then I would leave that company. Like if you work at Apple right now, you can't do open source. I would never work at Apple for that one reason, because you can't do open source at Apple.
Wait, like even in your spare time or just or
in your spare time, not you. You have to have a separate GitHub account, and you got to like basically, unless you work on Swift or another one of the other, like that's the one large open source project. They have a lot of small CocoaPods and libraries and stuff like that. But what I'm getting at is like the exposure, the benefit the company gets from just being a name that gets mentioned on stage is like it's unreal. Because everybody's trying to compete with Facebook and compete with Microsoft or Metaverse or whatever, all these different companies. But if you can show up and be like, "Hey, we're up and coming, come work for us,"
right?
Then like that's invaluable. But not every company sees it that way. It's like some companies don't send you to conferences because they don't want you to go find a new job.
Oh yeah, or just that's interesting.
But if you're looking for a new job, sorry.
No, it's fine.
Go ahead.
GitHub is hiring, right? GitHub's hiring, right? You're saying
they are hiring. We're hiring a ton of engineers on the communities team. So if you're interested in anything that's discussion, sponsors, what else is communities? Actually, Catherine works on the communities team, readme.so. So discussion sponsors. Why am I? Oh, the feed. If you go to github.com, that feed is going to get an update pretty soon.
Got it. This area.
Yep.
Got it.
That all communities related. So like definitely check out the careers page. Hit me up if you need a referral. I'm honestly, my only recommendation is like if you want a referral, like we have to have a Zoom call because I just want to know who you are before I recommend you. I've never said no to anybody if they ask for a referral. But I just want to make sure if people ask me questions like, "Hey, you're referring a lot of people." Well, it's because I'm famous. That's why.
Awesome. So just to kind of bring it back to like, I'm kind of selfishly here, making sure that I'm as unblocked as I can be to contribute to open source going forward. Because it's been a thing where like, I'm interested in that. And I feel like there have been a few times over the past couple of years where I've just been like, yes, let's do it. Not totally sure where to start. So for anyone who's like starting out, and we're not going to like dig into like the like all the points that you went over in your talk or like the step-by-step of everything. I guess we kind of go over it at like a higher level. But okay, say I've read through this before diving into the code. First off, I love that Ben has this. And for anyone who just joined, what was I gonna say? I just read "Oh my face" and I got thrown off. I don't know what that's in reference to. Maybe to Facebook. I'm not sure. But this is Ben Holmes's Slinkity project that we're checking out. So I would touch base with someone in the community Discord, and I would look at their existing documentation, and then is it documented as an issue? So he's kind of hitting some of the things that you touched on. So
going back to the issue, let's check out to see what this data thing that he was asking for tests for, because like usually my thing is like deep dive in the code and try to see if I can understand it, and there's a good chance if I can't understand it, not that I'm an expert coder, but if it doesn't make sense to me, it probably won't make sense to somebody else. So like my first step was like avoid the test, just see if the docs if this thing is documented. So we can go into the actual code itself. So he wants test on this formatted data for props, which is that plugin right there. So it looks like it's just it looks like it's just taking in some data and formatting it. It seems approachable. And then I would then go into go back to the issue and just look at his test previously, because that's the other thing that one of these merge PRs below, so like 25 or 24, one of those will give us a sense. Testing is like, it's kind of subjective to the project, so like everybody has a different structure and how they approach it. I've just tested a lot of stuff in my day, so like I know look at other tests before I start trying to write tests. So if you just click on the files changed tab, you should be able to see all the sort of completed tests. So ESLint stuff, Babel stuff, not important. And then we've got, do we have a test? We have a JS, that's a snapshot. There we go. So yeah, this looks like he's using, I don't know what he's using, but it's all built in because he's not calling directly to like a jest or anything like that. So my assumption is that his test, render HTML, looks like he's expecting some output, and then he's going to do some eager output, and then testing to, well, it looks like there's some, so I haven't tested. Oh, he's just using just snapshots. Cool. And then that render eager is a flag which I've never used before, to be quite honest. But it's a good, see, this is like a thing that I'd go deep dive and learn about what that means there, because like if I'm not able to even contribute a test to this, at least I'll learn how eager loading works in React and how to test it. Which I could totally use in my in OpenSauced, because we're definitely, again, 5-year-old project. I said 5-year-old, 2016, 2017 is when I first got to commit. So yeah, is that 5 years? It will be next.
Yeah.
It will be in a couple months.
Well, we will bake you a cake, or I think a pie maybe would be more appropriate, right? Bake you a pizza.
Something saucy for sure. Man, now I'm hungry. So I'm just looking at the test, basically just to identify, okay, Jess makes sense. There's no other like random stuff I see that's here. He's sort of just checking components. So like honestly, the way I test, even if this was my day job, a lot of copy pasta, see if I could change the names and faces so that no one can identify the bodies, or the HTML bodies rather.
Yes. Sounds like serial killer MO there.
Yeah, but this test actually is a render HTML. So like I think he just wants to see if I pass in a certain amount of props or whatever, it gets formatted the other way.
Cool.
So I think the first step is just like create a fork this actually would be the first step.
Yeah.
Clone it would be the second step. And then from there create a file and then test that. But with the caveat of we never comment on the issue saying that we exist yet.
Cool.
So like I would do any of that before saying I'm forking. Which all this is not intentionally to be funny, except the HTML body thing. That was intentional. The one thing I do in my project is on the Discord. So this kind of gets noisy. It's been a point of contention for some contributors. I have a notification that webhook that follows the project and then adds a notification in the Discord to let me know if someone forked or started the project. Star is because my own vanity and ego. Like if someone stars it, I'm like, oh, cool.
And if you're feeling down, you feel like you have self-worth on that day. You know, that's exactly how I exist too. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And but also in the same sense that I like to know if my project's being shared somewhere. It gives me signal of like, oh, there's a lot of people starting this project. Maybe it was mentioned somewhere. Maybe it was like a podcast.
Hacker News
or maybe that conference talk I did like got a lot of if it showed up
or
at
that
Hacker
live
News,
stream you showed up on. Who knows?
Yeah, I actually, so on the OpenSauced YouTube channel, I chatted with the maintainer of Git Trends.
Okay.
And he built a mobile app to basically tell you if your project is trending, which is absolutely amazing. Like it's something that probably could save someone's bacon like multiple times over. But
Why?
Mainly like for that same thing. You're getting a ton of stars. You're getting a bunch of interest. Like it's your opportunity. It's like you have a lemonade stand and like somebody
Okay, got
finally
it.
wants lemonade after 6 hours of sitting by yourself on the corner. It's like it's your
Got
time
it.
to shine. This is the time to basically convert contributors to users, the users to contributors. So like that's the sort of gimmick of his application is you add your
Cool.
repo and
Um,
it'll
does
give
it
you a notification.
does it add a little image and that's how it tracks the views, or does GitHub give this information to him?
He's doing polling. So he's leveraging the API.
Okay,
Uh, so GitHub does have this available in the API.
got it.
So like all the statistics and
It's
refer,
like in the
like
insights,
you clicked on this, you came from Google.
right?
In the API, GitHub will tell you
Oh,
you came from
nice.
Google, landed on
Okay,
the
cool.
repo. Not a lot of people leverage that
Yeah,
because not a lot of people care to know
right.
that stuff, but it is data available to you.
Cool.
It's not in the Insights tab too as well. Stuff goes to the API first before it shows up over there.
Got it. Okay.
But yeah, and
Awesome.
it's the we're talking two different angles right now, like talking about maintainer and then we're talking about contributors, like with your questions. But at the end of the day, like people just want as a maintainer, you want to see that you're providing value.
Hmm.
Unless there are people who just ship code up to GitHub for like just for reason, like no reason. It's like I did this cool thing. I don't want to maintain it. It's just out there. Please steal it. It's open source, but not open my time.
Yes.
So fork, clone, whatever, I don't care. Um, it's also very clear. Like you got to be very clear in your project that that's the game plan. Like I'm not looking for contributors. Um, Otherwise,
What?
contributors will get burnt out trying to figure out whether or not this person cares or not.
Hmm.
But it's also on the contributor to find it out quickly too, as well. So if Ben was like, "Look at these, whatever," like this, it's like what I do once a month. I don't care. Clone it, fork it, steal it, whatever. Like if that was Ben's attitude, which is not, like it would be very clear. Like you'd see a giant archive flag or in the README it says, "Hey, no contributions welcomed," whatever. Like
Yeah.
you got to state the facts up
Or I
front.
mean, for me, like if I come into a project of like something that I'm about to grab, and every single file has the same date, and it all says 2 years ago or whatever, and there's like three
Yeah.
commits, I'm like, all right, so this is not a very active thing that
Yeah,
I
it's the
should
same thing for
expect.
npm modules. Like if you see something that says 2 years ago, it's like, let me use this one that has a contribution today.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be the sort of holding the keys to how this whole project, my project at work works, because I happen to include a node module that was dead, which I've been
Yeah.
burned before. I've had to maintain an Angular module because it was just like a sort of side project for somebody, and I was like, we could
Oh.
really use this. So I'm gonna take all your code and make it my own,
Oh,
basically.
interesting. How did that work out?
It worked out well. I had basically cloned the repo. It was my own project. I learned how to actually deploy my first ever npm module to npm because I was like, I could solve a problem at work, be done by Thursday, have my entire Friday off. So I'm gonna clone this thing, deploy it to npm, and then we're gonna use it. I'm gonna be a maintainer, but just never contribute to it ever again. Um, we just needed like one fix, and like the
Right.
fix wouldn't happen, so that way I could use it in our UI. And that company's since folded, but it was, as far as my knowledge, it was still being leveraged until the day that thing shut down.
Okay. Nice. And Mike, yes, clone it, fork it, steal it is the best Daft Punk song. Good call. That'll be Brian's next TikTok, I guarantee.
Yeah,
You're not that kind of TikToker for people who aren't aware. You give like good
yeah,
career advice and chat about that kind of
yeah.
stuff.
I've pivoted away from the memes and I've tried to answer questions. And we can go at you mentioned we wanted to put a pin in this whole DevRel stuff. I got a whole strategy on TikTok that's actually I haven't shipped the YouTube video to my personal YouTube since August, but yet I've gained 50 subscribers and it's
Hmm.
all from TikTok. So I'm all about scaling and just creating a flywheel that I can sort of feed every once in a while, as
Yeah.
opposed to get on some sort of like constant train of like, oh, I gotta get another video out.
Man, I got rid of it just because I was spending a lot of my time on there, and I've deleted Twitter and TikTok and like every distracting app from my phone. And TikTok doesn't really have like a good web app, or you can't post to TikTok without the phone app, really.
Yeah.
Not in the same way. So I'm just kind of like, I don't know. Maybe I'll go back to it someday, but It is an app you can spend the day on.
Yep. My trick is basically run an entire conference that takes all your time, and then you'll be off TikTok for a month.
Cool. What's your November strategy?
But I have a week off, which that will be definitely a
Nice.
week of TikTok for sure.
Nice.
Um, but yeah, no conferences taking my time at the moment. So
Nice.
I'll be back. I'll be back on TikTok soon.
Congrats on GitHub Universe, by the way. I mean, I think we might have said it, but yeah, I'm sure it feels good to have that kind of in
Yeah.
the rear view. And
It it's one of those things like when you ship a feature, like you're shipping a code feature, like you close all the tabs, like entire Chrome browsers. Like GitHub Universe was that for me. Like I got to close tons of tabs and browsers because like we were doing my team powered a lot of the demos you saw in the keynote.
okay.
So I had tabs ready to go in case we had to rescript, like re-record another screen cap with a demo, um, just in case. I was like at the ready at all times. And as soon as that thing went live, like
You just
Tuesday or Wednesday morning, I was like closing all Chrome browsers.
honestly a
Command Q.
conference feels like more like I can throw this laptop out now. Like I can just like not just the browser, but just like, all right, I'm done with this. Oh, I'll get a
Yep.
new one.
I actually do. I'm waiting for my M1 to be coming.
See?
So I
See?
will try. This thing will be in the trash pretty soon.
That's how you get rid of laptops, right? Just garbage
Yeah,
disposal, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
that's how I've actually been exiting Vim for the past 8 years. I get
Nicely done.
a new laptop actually. It works out well.
Oh man. Awesome. Was there anything else that we wanted to touch on in terms of getting an open source or handling contributors or yeah, was there anything? I feel
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say
uh,
like usually the question is like what project do I start with? Where can I get started? Like
yeah.
what projects are looking for contributions? And I'd say there's like a plethora of things like goodfirstissues.dev or .com or first PRs or first timers only. Like there's tons of all these like Code Triage, another one that have opportunities for you to find things to work on. But the caveat is that I would highly recommend go build something with this thing or use like go contribute to things you're building with already because you kind of have to be invested into the open source project before like the contribution you can really show value.
Yeah.
So like that's the number one mistake I see a lot of people do is just like I'm just going to contribute to anything on this list. And I think
Yeah.
that's like the worst approach you can do because that usually is what starts to attract spam. You might not realize it, but you're spamming folks when you just sort of show up, ask a bunch of questions. You want to be able to show value. So like with your example of Slinkity, it's like go to that whatever that module or whatever it was called, the data thing. Like ask the question, is there docs? Can I learn about this thing before I contribute? Have I used this before in a project? Can I provide some context or value before even like forking the project, basically? And like so many people, like if you go to Insights, the Insights tab for Slinkity, um, and then go to Community, the same place we started this conversation with, like you can see Slinky doesn't have a pull request template, which I think Ben had mentioned he's like working on. Looks like he doesn't have an actual well, that's something he has to work on. It's actually identify code owners and admins on the project. And this is clear for folks who show up. They can go to a code owners file and see, oh, these are the people who own this part of the code or whatnot. But yeah, he's got issue templates. You can also check out issue templates to see if it's valuable. We have got issue forms for GitHub. An issue form would be so like if you go to OpenSauced and open up an issue, which I was going to mention this, but then we drove away from it. You can open any issue on any repo. It should work everywhere.
Okay. So issues.
Yeah.
New
So if you
issue.
go to new issue, and just click like bug report, I guess. Um, we've got this thing called issue forms now on GitHub.
Okay.
So as a requirement, you need to tell me if you're using OpenSauced, what browser you're using. Because so many times people just gave me like a screenshot of something broken.
Oh.
And my question is like, okay, it works for me. Now I have to ask you 20 questions. Okay, what's your environment? What's the browser? Are you in Mac, Windows, mobile, whatever? Answer those questions first. Please tell me if you're on the TV and using OpenSauced. That'd be amazing.
VR.
So like this, you never know. These crazy
love
kids
it.
in their metaverse.
Oh, it's a
But
multi.
yeah, so like this is actually powered by YAML, similar to GitHub Actions.
Okay.
We don't have time to go into like great details on this, but I highly recommend like this could be your first contribution to any project. It's just ask the right questions in an issue form, and then that way you can take your earlier this year we had like 60 issues on OpenSauce. We were constantly getting new stuff. Now we're deflecting people who don't want to answer the right questions.
Mm,
And every time an issue gets open, we're ready to like fix it because there's actually all the questions are answered.
that's really cool. So it's just a YAML file. That's awesome. Um, it's great.
Yep,
Is
same
it is
place you find your pull request template.
so is that in the .github thing
Yeah,
on the
it's
main?
slightly confusing for OpenSauce because we have the .github folder.
Got it.
I wish that it was a little more linkable, but we'll get there eventually. Well, GitHub will. But yeah, issue template and then bug.
Um, raw. Cool. Type markdown attributes. Is there like a doc on how to make this doc?
Yep.
What would I search for this?
Docs.github.com. Issue forms.
Issue forms. Cool. Awesome.
Yep. And there's your little basic example, which
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure we lifted all that from
that's
there and put it
perfect.
in OpenSauce.
Yeah, that's a solid example then if it hits most of what people need. That's great. Yeah, and that saves so much. I mean, like it makes it easier for everyone involved, you know? Like
Yeah.
I know exactly what you need. It's a lot less intimidating to look at than um just one big text field, right? It's like, what do they want me to say here? I don't know what to say, right? Um, yeah, I would much rather have that kind of a form set up than the alternative. So that's great. Awesome, man. Brian, thank you so much for coming on. Chat, was there anything else that we wanted to ask Brian? Anything else that you were curious about getting into open source? We touched on kind of the steps for how to get started with a project. So like once you can find a project that you like, reach out, say hi, let them know you exist. Then, after some communication, see what you might be able to help out with. Talk if there's an issue, let them know that you are first off a person that exists and that you would like to grab it, fork it. If read the contributing docs, right? Like if they have, so it was in Insights Community. I don't come here enough, so just reminding me to come here into the community tab is really helpful. So reading these docs in community is just a great tip. Find out what they want you to do and take it from there, right? Like if these docs don't exist, they might need more one-on-one communication. And if you can help them with these docs, and that can be the pull request. And then from there, like looking at examples, seeing previous PRs, how they work. Yeah, this was really, really informative, Brian. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah. Happy to be helpful.
Yeah, always good. And I want to give you another shout out. Let me see if I can pull it up, hitting up, like I'm using terminal and trying to find the command I ran 2 hours ago. There we go. Nice. Shouting you out on Twitch. Yeah, please follow Brian. He is on Twitter. Dropping that link in here. Over here at bdougie.live.
Oh, I'm offline.
Yeah,
I need to figure out
technically
how to put your stream on there.
Oh, and there you go. You just got to follow. Nice. From sarcastic abs or sarcastic sabs. And yeah, that person awesome. And OpenSauced.pizza.
You haven't yet pronounced their name yet.
Yeah, I will work on it. But no, but thank you for following. And Brian, thank you for being here, man. It was a pleasure. I hope the chat feels the same way I do, because I feel a bit less intimidated of those just like, am I going to be a nuisance? I know they want help, but I also don't want to go in and look like an idiot. So,
Yeah.
answering my questions. I really appreciate it, and I hope the chat got as much out of it as I did. So chat, thank you, Brian. Chat, let's thank Brian for being here, and from me, thank you, Brian, for being here, man. Was there anything else that you wanted to shout out?
Yeah, no, I think you successfully shouted me out. I'd also mention, if you have not succeeded in open source, it's because you haven't failed enough. So
Nice.
you gotta put yourself out there.
And you have 2 podcasts, correct?
Technically 3.
Okay.
So I do a podcast called Jamstack Radio, which is all about the Jamstack. I also do a GitHub podcast, which is called the README podcast, which we interview open source maintainers and contributors about how they impact the open source ecosystem. And then I finally do a Dis Developing Story podcast, which is interviews with developers on how they became developers.
Awesome. Okay.
Some people you've probably heard of before.
Yeah, Evan Yu of Vue. Is that Scott Hanselman? Yeah.
Scott Hanselman, yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. Got the Home Assistant guy, got Tobias from Webpack, Henry from Babel.
Very cool.
Got the Curl guy. Oh, and then Rachel, who just shipped the new React docs as well. We just chatted with her.
I love this gradient effect. This is super cool. Is that like canvas? Like a shader? I'll have to have you back, or you'll have to send me the person who made this if this wasn't you.
Yeah, I can send you over the team. But man, honestly, I don't remember who specifically worked on this site though. Yeah, awesome. Chakra, and then Anthony Writes Code, also of Twitch fame.
Awesome. And Tinkering Dog, thank you so much for being here. First time viewer. I appreciate you coming through. And Thomas says, I want to be famous enough just so I can shamelessly request interesting people to interview for hours. That's the goal, isn't it? That's the dream. Just being able to reach out to people who are super interesting, be like, hey, want to come on my thing? You do? You responded? What? Yeah, that's
I mean, the trick is just have a platform. People, as long as it's recorded and shareable, what Evan will do, he'll go share that podcast to other people because he wants to answer those questions once, and so that way he can go back and write code.
So you ruined it for everyone else. You took it, and now I can't go.
No one else can interview Evan now.
Oh, well. Thomas, if you just tell people how delightful you are, or I can tell them, they will for sure come on whatever you have. So, Brian, thanks again, man. Let's find someone to raid, and we'll see you on Thursday. We actually mentioned her in this show. We have Steph Eccles coming in on Thursday to build out something pretty like kind of like an improv site where you, the chat, are going to come up with things. We already have a thread going in the Discord, so if you're not in the Front End Horse Discord, please drop in there now. My little thing worked. How about that? I pushed a button on my Streamlabs and it worked. That was shot in the dark, but it worked. I've always had it there. I just never remember it. Anyway, she's gonna come on, build CSS 11T. It's gonna be a blast. Steph is fantastic. She is always a joy to have on. So please be here on Thursday, and I will see you then. Let's find someone to raid. Take care, everybody.